Now, before we start the afternoon session with the ECE presentations, as you know, last week a lecturer in the ECE department has passed away, Mr. Ta'an Mukhtar. He served with the department for over 27 years with full dedication. I guess most of you know him. So please, in his memory, let's stand for a minute of silence. Thank you. Now, during this afternoon session, we will have two keynote speakers, the distinguished alumnus and distinguished young alumnus of the ECE department, plus a number of presentation of marvelous projects that were carried out by groups of ECE students. We will start the session by having a speech from Dr. Mansour Karam. Dr. Karam won the Distinguished Alumnus Award. He was voted in the ECE department. Dr. Karam received his BE degree in CCE in 1995 and his master and PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford University in 1996 and 2000, respectively. Currently, he is working with the industry heavyweights to deliver a very cool product at the center of a disruptive trend in the infrastructure space.
Perfect.
His new stealth startup is well funded, and this might be of interest to you. He is looking for highly motivated engineers who want to join his exceptional team and to work on products that will change the industry. So after the presentation, you can queue outside and talk to him. In prior jobs, Dr. Karam joined Route Science, Arista, and Big Switch very early and led critical efforts in various functions in engineering, product management, business development, sales, and so on. At Big Switch, Dr. Karam helped develop and execute their business model, business development strategy, strategic alliance, the partner ecosystem, channel network, and pricing. And prior to this, he was the first business hire at Arista Networks, where he identified the key verticals and developed and executed the early product, marketing, sales, and partnership strategy. Dr. Karam holds more than 10 patents in networking technologies. He describes himself as an entrepreneur and executive with a passion for building high-tech infrastructure companies from the ground up. Dr. Karam, we are glad to have you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much for this glowing introduction. And thank you for the honor. I'm really excited to be back. In fact, I was exactly in your shoes. I think it was 20 years ago, I think, exactly. So I was, in April, I was in my last semester at AUB, towards getting my degree in CCE. At the time, it used to be called CCE. And it's still called CCE, great. And so, I would say I'm 20 years ahead of you. I've gone through my journey, so I thought, one thing I could do today is just share my perspectives, maybe a few tips of things I've learned over these 20 years, which might be helpful to you. So the first two tips are really around the choice of profession. If you were like me, you probably struggled with that as well. I was a good student. I was good in math, physics, biology, and I had quite a few opportunities to do mostly what I wanted. And so that was, at the time, it felt like a really big decision. And it consumed me. And then finally, I chose computer engineering. And the first thing I want to say is that computer engineering and generally electrical engineering is really unique, and it's really a great profession to be in. And it all goes back to Moore's law. I'm sure you're very familiar with Moore's law. It was essentially a prediction that Gordon Moore made in 1965, actually almost exactly 50 years ago, 50 years last week, where it was amazing foresight, where he predicted that every 2 years, transistor density would double, which means that performance would double, costs would be halved every 2 years. Which means that if you look at it over a period of 20 years, you'd get 1,000 time improvements. Or over 40 years, 1,000 times thousands is a million. There was nothing like that before in the history of mankind. And what this law did was really fuel innovation that was completely unprecedented. And within the innovation really stems opportunity. So what does this mean practically? It means that if you buy new systems today and you want to remain competitive a few years from now, you have to replace all your systems a few years from now, which means a lot of opportunity for the industry. It means that if you have a great idea, but the state of the art doesn't support it, computer power is not there to support your idea, all you have to do is be patient a bit, just wait a few years, and then performance of the computers will get there. And so what this means is that, and this law is expected to continue for the next 20 years, and therefore for your careers as well. And so this means that in this field, if you work hard and want to take advantage of the opportunities are plenty. And there are a few companies, of course, in the history of computing that really made a huge mark. Of course, Apple 20 years ago, we had Google, which really provided access to information that was unprecedented, and Amazon, and then in the last 10 years we have social media, and then Uber, which is reinventing transportation. So that's number one. Number two is also related to profession, but it's in a different angle to this. Essentially, when you start with a profession, you're always you're going to have this feeling of insecurity. I think Bassam touched upon that in his presentation as well earlier this morning. And you're not exactly sure what you're doing. You're learning as you go. And because of that, probably I'm not having the most fun. So there are lots of studies that looked up at this, and there was this study particularly in 1993 by Erickson and Lehman, which studied within the context of the conservatory violinists, and they kind of categorized these violinists into three categories. You had the elite violinists, those that were master soloists. Then there were the good ones. And then the third category were just the average ones. And the purpose of the study was really to find out what really differentiated these people. Was it really talent? Was it hard work? And the results of the study were quite fascinating. Well, what they found out was that those that were in the elite group put in not only just more work than everybody else, but a lot more work. Essentially, these were people that were practicing more than 30 hours a week, and that had put in way over 10,000 hours of work. Those that were good had practiced around 8,000 hours on average, and then there was that were average actually practiced a lot less, around 4,000 hours. What was also very interesting about the study was that there wasn't anyone that was an elite player that only practiced 4,000 hours. So this myth of being born with talent such that you didn't have to work, that just doesn't exist. And then on the other hand, there wasn't anyone that actually put in 10,000 hours or more and then that wasn't in that elite group. Which really means that at the end of the day, the hard work and the work towards the intent goal of getting better made all the difference. And so, we really do experience this in our careers, and I certainly have seen the same both with me and others. 10,000 hours is roughly 10 years of work. It's 40 hours a week, 50 weeks a year. So it's essentially, 10,000 hours is 10 years. And once you get to that level and you exceed that, then you're going to get a level of comfort. You're going to feel in command in your profession, and that's irrespective of your profession. That will really allow you to kind of spread your wings and have fun. And so, my advice to you is essentially, put in that good work and be patient, and you'll get there. And given, that you are in this field that has all this tremendous opportunity, you have all the tools in your hand to really reach, great successes. So this is the third tip. When I was younger, when I saw people, getting big breaks, you couldn't, but think that probably luck had a huge factor. And I don't want to be dismissing luck. Certainly, we all, first of all, should feel very lucky, and you guys should feel very lucky that you're getting an education at a school like this one. You're already far ahead than a lot of people in this world. And I also don't want to dismiss bad luck. Bad luck is can happen to all of us. No one is immune to bad luck. You could be, working all your life towards an opportunity, and then, you could have a recession that could delay you by a number of years, or you could, be involved in an accident. These things do happen. But what I really want to impress on you is that generally, big breaks really happen. I would say not generally, always happen because of preparation. And that's something that's completely in your control. If you really want something, you just want to be the most prepared, most than anybody else, to get what you want. And opportunities will happen at certain points in time. You can't control that. Stars need to align for those opportunities to happen. But if you are prepared when that opportunity arrives, then you'll be the one that will take advantage of that opportunity. And certainly in my journey, in my career, I've experienced that a few times. Certainly my first big break was when I was accepted at Stanford after AUB. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Amidist. I was, at the time Amidist was a lot smaller than it is today. But I knew they existed, and more than a year before I graduated, I went there and start learning about what it would take to actually go to the US. I also at the time paid them a hefty sum for a student to really help me prepare towards admission or applications to these various schools. And I applied to 10 schools out of the top 50 schools in the US. And I actually prepared applications to all of them. And I also got letters of recommendations for all of them, and wrote what at the times were these essays to all of these schools. And so, I got accepted at Stanford, but I also got accepted at a few other schools. And so, there was a lot of preparation that was involved. And, another big break of mine was joining Arista really early. And there too, there was a lot of preparation. Certainly being at Stanford, I had met a lot of people there. There was a group of people from Stanford that started Arista, whom I knew and I had worked with. But also at the time, at the point in my career I was really looking for a new opportunity, and I had done an exhaustive search of the entire industry looking for new companies that were starting, and that's how I found out that Arista was there. But even then, I didn't take that for granted, being there for granted or being accepted there for granted. And so I actually prepared for 2 weeks for my interview. So there was a lot of preparation there as well. And again, a year ago when I started my company, the level of preparation for that was absolutely intense. And so you can really create your own luck. And the way to do this is really to be prepared. Tip number 4. I'm sure you guys have watched the movie Amadeus, or maybe I'm showing my age, but Amadeus was a movie in the 80s that really, went through the life of Amadeus Mozart. And, the way, he was shown was as this genius that, the way he composed music was just by, some sort of divine inspiration. He had, these symphonies already, all figured out in his head, and all he had to do was take a pen and write them down. And turns out that this is completely false. There is no truth to that at all. In fact, Amadeus Mozart, for the first 10 years of his career, actually, he started playing piano when he was 4. All his compositions were quite substandard. It's only later in his career that he had, much better compositions. And even each one of those were really the result of lots of dedication, months of work, lots of iterations. Nothing just appeared to him. It was just a lot of iterations to get to the result. And really, in life, that's exactly how innovation, invention, creation happens. It never happens just like that. You never get just inspired. It really is the result of a lot of iterative work. The other story I really like to, that I really enjoy is the one from the White brothers. So essentially, these guys, they invented flying, and they did that over many, many years. And what's really interesting about their study is that about their use case was that they weren't the first one to try. Many have tried before, and also in their case, they spent a few years actually completely misled, going in the wrong direction, working on a design that ultimately didn't work. And through the insights from those lost years, they really learned what it took to actually get back on track, and then finally get to the point where they invented flying and the flying machine. And in fact, if you look at the history of Silicon Valley, and through my experience, this happens a lot. You start with the company with a hypothesis, and over time you work to validate this hypothesis, and then essentially you realize after a few years that your hypothesis was flawed in one way or another. And so you have to make adjustments, and sometimes these adjustments are quite significant. You hear about companies pivoting. So that happens all the time. Tip number 5. We have this idea of successful people as people that make no mistakes, right? So essentially, everything successful people does, it pans out to be a success, and that's blatantly false, right? We all make mistakes. In fact, the process of learning is a process that, by definition, includes making mistakes. When you're being successful, it means that once, every time when you move up, you're going to be doing something for the first time. And every time you do something for the first time, you're going to do it suboptimally in some way or another, and you learn from that. I think what's really, really critical is not to spend, a lot of time lamenting one's mistakes, or especially not blaming oneself. You need to grieve a little bit your mistakes. It needs to be internalized so that through that process, you learn something from it. But this is something that's really one has to work on during their careers. And, essentially have that right dose of grieving, but then also moving forward very quickly and without any blame, in order to just, learn from that and do it better the next time. Certainly that's been my experience, and that's the experience I've had with everyone that I've worked with. And my sixth and final tip here is really about what the meaning of success means, and really people have different ideas of success. Maybe when you're younger, you think of success as glorified in terms of having great vacations, or a big house, or driving a nice car. Really, in reality, success is very different. At the end of the day, you're offering a service. You're offering yourself, in your work, or in any endeavors you're part of. And success is really being valued for the service that you're offering. And so the more valued you are, the better the services are that you are offering, the more successful you're going to be. And it's really as simple as that. For example, for me, as being a CEO for my company, I essentially am offering a service for my employees, for my customers who are entrusting me, to my investors, And the better job I'm going to do, the more valued I'm going to be, and the more successful I'm going to be. And this actually, relates to the idea of entitlement. Sometimes you find, entitlement in people, and I think that entitlement is really the enemy. The entitlement is thinking that because, I've gotten a great degree from a great university, now society somehow owes me a job. Or that because I was successful before, the society owes me to be successful again. No, in reality, it doesn't matter what you've accomplished before. What matters is what you're going to accomplish from here on. And this is why entitlement is completely the enemy. And I certainly use this in my hiring process. When I see entitlement in people, to me it's a red flag. And I've worked with people in my career that have created billion-dollar companies and billion-dollar industries. And these are the least entitled people you will ever meet. And so if those people can be entitled, so it can be the least entitled, so can all of us. And so just to recap, you chose the right profession. You're doing great there. Be patient. There's lots of opportunity for you. In 10 years, you'll know what I mean. Be prepared. That's the way you're going to achieve your big breaks. You do not need to be a genius to invent. Just iterate and don't quit. You will make mistakes. Just learn how to deal with that. And finally, never be entitled. And so I really wish you a great career ahead. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm glad to present you with this.
Very, very nice. Thank you very much.
Just in recognition of your achievements and career opportunities.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.